Welcome back, grade 12s. We have to go on. I hope the break you did catch some air, and then maybe you did just digest and check whatever we're discussing. You can remember. Remember, I think this is important for us to know. We need to revise. This is just revision, and then just make sure that the concepts that we're discussing are things that you really know. Like I said, I need us to just go back and spend a bit of time on the concept of informal settlements. Like, what are they, and so where do we find them? So I'm just going to open up something here for us to just go through the notes that have been. Yes, here it is. Where is this? Yes, fine. Now let us look at the picture. This was taken from 2011 question paper. Now they're showing us a picture. Now on the picture they say it's Y. Can you see? I hope we all can see the picture. Then it's Y, and then what does the question say? It says, let's look at the question. It says, I'm just going to enlarge so that we can see the question. Again, we're all going to read through the question. Yes. Now it says, photograph Y represents Y in figure 3.4. What is Y in figure 3.4? Y in figure 3.4 is an informal settlement. There, you see it says a shanty town. Can you see? Y is said to be a shanty town. Or, what does that mean? It means another name for an informal settlement is a shanty town. See how simple that is. Informal settlement or shanty town. Now, the photograph Y represents this photo. Look at the picture, and now you see the shacks. So it simply means it's an informal settlement. Let's read the question. It says, now, photograph Y represents Y in figure 3.4, which we did see that was an informal settlement. Now, in a single paragraph of not more than 12 lines, outline any problems and possible solutions that the shanty town or informal settlement poses to the city authorities. Can you see that? Problems that we find in the informal settlement, and then what should be the solutions thereof. Remember, now let's look at the characteristic. Now, if we look at the characteristic of an informal settlement, we are going to be able to see the problems that are there. Now let us again maximize. There it comes. Can you see that? There it is. Now, what are the characteristics of an informal settlement? Let's look at it. It says this is found on the city outskirts, like we've seen in our diagram. And then problem number 1, informal settlements, there is no service delivery. Remember, guys, we're trying to write a paragraph. Now, why did I really pick on this question? It's because, and most times, these questions, these long paragraph questions, they give us, it's an opportunity for us to get maximum marks when we have to answer them, because I think this is the simplest thing that we could ever do. Answer a question that is asking us what are the problems found in informal settlements. What's only important here is that we have to write our response in a paragraph, use full statement, full sentences, and write the paragraphs. Like, now the problems we say there is no service delivery. What is service? What do we mean? That there are no roads, there is no sanitation, there's no water, people, they do not have electricity, they do not, there's no schools, there's no, usually people here would say there's no infrastructure. There are high poverty levels. You see, there's quite a lot of people who are unemployed, and then there's high crime rates. These are the problems that we find where? In informal settlements. Now, houses are built out of plastic, either plastic or wood or zinc or anything that these people can find to build houses in informal settlements. And then obviously it leads to say there is unhealthy conditions. Yeah, many diseases, it's not really nice to be there. Now there's very dense housing with unplanned street patterns. Can you see that? Now, these are the problems. So we have identified, we said the problems in an informal settlement, we said these are the problems. But let's go back to the question. It also says you outline any problems and any possible solutions that you think we can afford, or we can really apply to solve these problems that these people have in the informal settlement. Now let's think, what are the possible solutions here? Now, obviously, I would go for solutions. I'd say solution number one to solve problems in informal settlements. What? Let's build houses for people in informal settlements. And it's happening, guys. Have you seen the RDB houses? Those houses were erected in areas where there were informal settlements. So do you see, it's a solution number one to curb the problem, to solve one of the problems in informal settlements. Number two, solution. Remember, we said these people do not have, infrastructure, no basic infrastructure. So what do? We provide people in informal settlements with what? With infrastructure. What is infrastructure? This is where we say we have to build for them the roads. Remember, build roads, provide electricity, Now, with electricity, it also brings me to a point where we say, we have provided infrastructure, let us provide what again? Let's provide provision of services. Remember, services will be things like electricity, schools. See, these people have to work, so let's provide again what? We have to provide employment. Now, what am I trying to do here, guys? I have only written 4 facts. There's quite a lot of facts that can come in when we when we try and say what are solutions that can be applied to problems that we find in informal settlements. There's quite a lot. But what is it that I want you to realize now is that I want you to realize that what are informal settlements? There's no services. What are the conditions? And then what is it that we can do to do what? To solve the problems that we find in informal settlements. I think this is one of a very interesting topic that we should know, because I think it's very, very simple and straightforward. Now, on that score, guys, let us move on and see what we have in store as we move on through our work. Remember, we've just discussed informal settlements. Now, what comes? I want you to look at this picture. There it is. Can you see the picture? Now, it shows different types of settlements. Can you see that? I took it again from a question paper. What am I seeing? I can see that there's this is an urban settlement here. It's a type of urban settlement. There's another urban settlement at B. Can you see that? And then there's another settlement at H. There's F. There's C. There's D. Now, we have to give names to these settlements. What do we call these settlements? We are going to come back to this picture and try and give the names as we have after we have discussed them. But where am I taking you? I am saying to you, we are going to talk about types of urban settlements. That in general, we have 3 types of settlements. Can you see that? There's central place towns, there's trade and transport towns, or cities, you'd rather say trade and transport towns or trade and transport cities, and there is specialized towns. We're going to discuss this. We need to know what is a central place town, what is a trade and transport town, what is a specialized town. Now, let's go further. Can you see that? That is a central place town. What's a central place town? It's a town that provides services to surrounding rural areas. Now think about the Free State, the whole province. Think about the number of cities that we have in the Free State. Oh, it's only 1 city. But how many central place towns do we have in the Free State? There's quite a lot of central place towns in the Free State because our area has got a lot of what? Commercial farms. So what is the purpose of the farm? What is the purpose of the central place towns that we have? They serve surrounding rural areas with what? With services. Like you can mention, there's quite a lot. There's Senegal. That's a central place town. There's Harrismith. That's a central place town. Remember, these towns that I mentioned, there's Poloroos. As I was traveling to Bloemfontein, I think I passed a lot of central place towns. Why is that the case? Because there's a lot of commercial farms in our province. Hence, you have these towns. They are evenly placed around the Free State. And what is their purpose? They serve surrounding rural areas. And then what are the services that you expect to find in a central place town? There's going to be a shop, a hotel, a bank, a school, and then around, you see, there's our rural settlements around. So we are saying first type of urban settlement is a central place town. What's the purpose of a central place town? It provides surrounding rural areas with services. And we have now said again that in the Free State, there is a lot of central place towns. Why? Because we have a lot of commercial farms. So they have to serve these commercial farms. Let us go on. The next thing that comes is the trade and transport towns. Now, trade and transport towns or cities, there's quite a lot of them. Let us check. Now, they are found. Can you see the map key that I have here? The key for my picture. There's river, there's a road, there's settlement, there's mountain. Now, these trade and transport cities are found in any of these places, like they are found in close to the mountains, close to the railway lines, close to the roads. It depends on the function of these cities. Let us check. The first type, look, we have what we call the break of bulk point. Remember? Now, let us try and explain what is this break of bulk point. They say there is a change of transport from one type of transport to what? To another type of transport. Think about it. If goods come into South Africa by sea or by ship, they come by ship, and then what happens? Can you see there? There's a road. There's the sea. Can you see the sea? And then there's the settlement. Now, it says this settlement is a break of bulk point. What am I saying? The goods come in by ship, and then they change, now transported by what? By road, this is by railway into different parts of what? Of the country. So most of the cities or the type of urban settlements that are break of bulk points, we find them along ports, like Durban also serves as a break of bulk point. Why? Goods arrive from Asia or anywhere in the world by ship, and then by cargo ship, and then what do? They are loaded either into the trains, railway, or into trucks, and then they are transported to different areas around South Africa. So we're saying the first type of trade and transport city will be the break of bulk point. What's the other one? We have what we call junction towns. Now these towns, they develop along intersections of railways or roads. Now you have a town that develops at an intersection. Why has the town developed at an intersection? Because all traffic passes there, and then there's a need for services, and then you have a town that has developed. I have an example of a town that I know in the Free State that serves as a junction town. It's Harrismith. For people in the Free State, for me to move from Bloemfontein to get to Devon, I have to pass through Harrismith. For me to move from Joburg to Devon, you see, I have to pass through Harrismith. From a person in Devon, to move from Devon to Cape Town, they have to pass through, their path, the road leads through Harrismith. Now, what is Harrismith? It's a town that is a junction town, because all roads they do what? They converge around through the town. So it's the second type of what? Of a junction town. It's a town where the roads they converge where? At intersections. Now let's go on and see what we have again. Now we have the gap town. I love the Afrikaans word. Can you see? It says a deurgang. So did you pass through? It's a gang, a gap town. Now these towns are found between mountains or passes, where you have a physical barrier like a mountain, but now a town is built around or along that. Now, these are the trade and transport cities. Now let's go on. We also have specialized cities. What do we mean when we say we have specialized cities? Think of a city, Welkom, or a town, basically, Welkom. Think of what comes to mind when you think of Welkom? Gold mining. Why gold mining? Because the development of Welkom in the past, it was a specialized town because it was a mining town. So what do I mean? I mean specialized towns have got one dominant function. Like you have education, mining, tourism, but you need to know that specialized towns only have what? One dominant function. And guys, when we say one dominant function, it does not mean that if a specialized city is there with that dominant, there's not going to be any other function. There are going to be any other functions, but it's just that the town is specializing in this particular function. Like, guys, we've never been to Wheatbank. No one has been. I've not been to Wheatbank. I'm sure some of you have been to Wheatbank. But you know what comes to mind when I think Wheatbank? I think coal mining. You see? Now, what does it say? It says Wheatbank specializes in coal mining. So these are the specialized towns that we have. So you'd find, like on the slide, it shows there. Look, you have a university, there's a school, a college, there are holiday towns like Clarence. It's a holiday town. See? And then there you have it. So what are we doing now? Let us just recap. We said we have different types of urban areas. We said there are central place towns, and we said there are trade and transport towns. Our trade and transport towns, we said they are gap towns. We said we have break of bulk points. We said we have junction towns. We said we have gap towns. And lastly, we said we also have specialized cities. Now, with that, I think we need to move on. As we move on, look at the picture. Can you identify the model? We are going to discuss the models of urban areas, the structures that form structure. How are urban areas planned, or how are urban areas built? Now, if you look at that picture, there's not one model, but I think there's two models there. There is the concentric zone model. Can you see the concentric zone model? Let's discuss them. Urban models. The first model that we have is the concentric zone model. What do they mean when they say concentric zone? I think we need just to draw a simple model, concentric zone model. Let me see if I can draw on this nice thing. Yes. Concentric zone. Look, there's a circle. What are these people? What is this model saying to us? It says we have zones that form circles around the CBD. That's basically what's being said. There's the circle. This will be my central business district. Remember, the heart of the city will always be the central business district. And then what does it say? It says there are circles, all the other land use zones. What do? They are around, they are distinct. You find they are around the CBD. There you have it. Then I have my concentric zone model. Do you see that? Now I have the CBD, I'll have the residential area, I'll have the industrial area here, I'll have the zone. You remember, after the CBD, what comes is the transition zone, the zone of decay. Can you see that? I have my light industries here, I have the industrial, and then I'll have the residential area here. What is this model? What's important for us is that we have to be able to identify the model and know its characteristics. So I'm saying this is the concentric zone model. What does it say to us? It says the zones are concentrated around the nuclei. The nuclei, which is what? The CBD. So you have zones radiating outwards, guys, very important, radiating outwards from the CBD. Let's read something about this. There it is. What does it say to us? It says the concentric zone model. It was based upon studies of American cities and in the 1920s. It has a central business district as its center. Remember, that's what we did. And this zone is mainly, the CBD has got shops and offices. And then around the CBD is the transition zone or the twilight zone or the inner city. And then as you move away from the CBD, you'll have all these other land use zones. The other model that we have is the sector model. Can we look at the sector model before we look at it? Do you see now, as we go back to the model that we had to identify earlier, do you see that there's the concentric zone model? These are the circles. Look, there's CBD, there's zone of decay, there's area, there's area. But just below, can you see just below it, there's the second model, which is the sector model. What are we saying? Look, the city in this case is divided into different sectors. There's an area, look, they say it's poor quality residential area. Can you see that sector? There's the CBD always at the center, and then there's the industrial area. Obviously here, close to the CBD, you'll have light industries, and away from the CBD, there you have my heavy industries. Can you see that? And then they say here, there's a again, there's poor quality residential areas, and then you see there's rural urban fringe. But what are we trying to do here? We're trying to say the sector model will have, it says certain areas have got specific zones and sectors. In a city, there are areas where you have certain functions found. Can we read about it? Yes, there it is. It says each sector reflects a distinct type of land use radiating from the center. Once established, a sector maintains its character. land use zones developing along the main transport routes, industries and lower cost housing developed along line of main routes. The sequence occurrence occurs within this sector. So if I have to say, let us roughly say, let's draw this sector model roughly. It's going to be simple for me. The CBD is always the core, CBD. And what did they say to us? They say every thing radiates from the part it's distinctive. You see, I have different sectors now. I have what? Sectors radiating from the CBD. Then I have my sector model. Can you see how this we just have to understand what is it all about, and then you can draw anything. Well, hopefully we won't be required to draw these things, because I know some of us cannot really draw. They cannot really do rough sketches and everything. But what's important, you need to know to identify it. By merely looking at it, I need to look at it and say, oh, this is a sector model. I need to look at it and say, oh, this is a concentric zone model. That's very important for us to be able to identify these models. Now let's go on and see what other model do we need to discuss. The other model is the multiple nuclei model. This one, they say, it explains the growth of modern conurbations. Guys, what is a conurbation? Remember, when we were talking about cities from their size, small to complex, like the simplest one is a isolated farmstead, and the largest one, you remember that? So as they develop, this is what happens with this model, that the activities are located in particular areas to meet specialized needs. They do have shopping centers. They are located along points of maximum accessibility. As urban area continue to expand, they absorb smaller settlements. The patchwork result to filtered concentric. It's not a concentric zone model, it's not a sector model, but they say there's multiple nuclei, there's different areas where there's going to be certain activities that you find in a city. You do not find them at a specific area only. There are different parts of the city. You have different activities, like you have 4, 5 malls in one city at different parts. Do you see that? Fine. Instead, there are a number of different size centers, including original civic, joined together by the transport system. Okay, I think we need to move on. What are we saying now? This is very important. Guys, when we speak of a city, it is important to note that this is what we always find. All the cities in the world have got these functions. Every city performs a certain function to provide for the needs of its inhabitants. Can you see that? There has to be functions in a city. You cannot have a city without functions. Each activity needs its own specialist type of land use. Do you see that? Every city has a function, and all the activities that we have in a city, they need special area where there's going to be land use. Hence we say that we've got land use zones. What are we saying? There has to be an area for administration, because it's an activity. Can you see? There's administration as an activity. There has to be a town hall, there are courts, there are government offices, there are police headquarters. Every city needs to have these things, because now we are going to say there is a land use for administration. Industry. Obviously, there has to be factories and workshop and industrial estates in every city. So what are we doing here? We're saying, what is it? What are the activities that we find in a city? And we're saying there's administration functions. The city has got administrative function, like there's industries. What else? There's commerce. Now, with commerce, there are shops, there are warehouses, there are banks in the city. There's big, and guys, what are we saying? You have a special area in a city where you're going to find these commercial functions. Not everywhere. You cannot find a bank next to a factory. You see, they have specific areas where they are found. And again, there's transport as an activity in a city. You are going to see there's an area where buses stop. There's a train station. There's a taxi rank. There's an airport. There are roads. There are car parks. Why are we saying this? We're saying because there are areas where we find certain activities in a city. And lastly, guys, there are residential areas. Like you have houses, you have hotels, you have nursing homes. What is it? What's the importance of this slide that we're using now? Is that we need to understand that every activity in a city has got a specific zone where it is found. All right? Fine. Now, there's again recreation. Remember? There are space for leisure centers, there are cinemas, there's playing fields, and lastly, there are schools. You have social services. There's hospitals, there's schools, there's health centers, fire stations, there's water and treatment work. And guys, I do not expect to go to any city and find that sewage treatment works is next to a recreational center or is next to a bank or commercial. You see, you cannot mix certain functions to not do what? They don't mix. So they will be found away from each other in their specific zones. I hope we still getting along fine and not too fast, but I think I'll try to reduce my pace now. Now let's go on, guys. The next topic that comes is urban hierarchies. We're not going to spend much time on this. We just need to understand that urban areas are classified, can be classified according to their size, from the most simplest urban settlement with little functions and to the most complex urban settlement. So they have a hierarchical order, like from the lowest, not very important, to the most big and very important urban settlement. Now, what is it that we have here? Yes, towns provide a central place in which the local population can obtain services such as shops. We know that we have central place towns. They provide services such as shops, banks, their schools, hospitals, libraries, theaters, police stations, government offices, and quite a lot of things. These shops and services can be hierarchically organized. Now let's look at how they are organized. Look at the diagram. Ooh, something's missing here. Look at the diagram. Now, can we see that there is low order, middle order, and that is high order? There's low order, middle order, and high order. Remember, we're talking hierarchy. Now, the low order towns, or the small towns, that's where we go most frequently. We go most frequently. We just go. We buy these small things from these small towns. Like we buy supplies for today. We buy our groceries at these towns. If we stay away, we just travel, buy groceries, come back. You see, we buy this, but then we buy them most frequently. So it's small towns. They have a lower order. They're selling goods that are cheaper in price. But if you look, let's look at the high order. High order, you have cities. Now, guys, let's make an example with the Free State Province. In the Free State Province, we have a city that is Bloemfontein. What functions do you expect to find there? It's a high order function. There's quite a lot of car garages here. They're selling cars. That is a very expensive things. They're selling expensive, you have shops that are selling expensive furniture. Why is that the case? Why do you find such things here? Because we less frequently visit. We see some people get very excited when they have to come to Bloemfontein because it sometimes happens once a year. You see, we we seldom come here. We don't often come here because we have what we need, small order goods where we stay in our small towns. Can you see that? Now we are saying we have places, urban areas that have low order, that are of a low order, and then you have urban places that are middle order, and then you have urban places of a high order. Let's continue and see. Now, what's important again is that we need to be, with the urban hierarchy, we need to understand the central place theory. This is very important. We're going to do some illustrations on paper, and then so that we can really understand the concepts behind the urban central place theory. Now, the following definitions are very, very important for us to understand because they are very important because we will be able to understand the central place theory once we understand the concepts. Now, let us look at the first one. The first concept that is there is the sphere of influence. I've heard that other people say it's the market area. What is the sphere of influence? It is the area served by the settlement. It is the area from which people travel to use the settlement, or the area to which bus services run and deliveries are made. Can you see that? Now, I am going to try and draw something here. I'm going to draw a sketch. Let's go back to paper. There we are. Now, I am going to say, I love my city. I love Bloom. Remember, we're talking sphere of influence. Now, we said it's the total area from which a city draws its people. Now, I have Bloom, and then what other small town? I do not really love these small towns because there's not enough services, guys. So you have to move to Bloom. All of you are invited here to Bloom. Come stay in Bloom. Now, what other small town do I have to write? Why do I say small town? I am saying small town because I want to stress we're talking urban hierarchy. There's small towns, small urban areas, service centers, and as they move up the increase in size, they have more services and functions, and they have high order functions. I cannot think of any town but Senegal. Now, guys, obviously, it's a central place town. So, where do the people who buy in this area come from? From Senegal. People in Senegal who buy. Fortunately, at times there's a road passing by. You have people buying as they pass, but most of it influences the people around the town, just around the town. So the sphere of influence of this town, Senegal, it's just a short distance. Can you see that? Just a short distance. Now, let's go back to the main city, Bloom. Are you aware that people in Senegal sometimes come and visit and buy stuff in Bloom? People from there's people from Maseru, our neighboring country, they come and buy stuff where? In Bloom. So guys, what is the sphere of influence of Bloom? Bloemfontein has got a large sphere of influence. It influences all the towns in the Free State. Can you see that? Now, what does that mean? It means a high order city will have a higher sphere of influence, and a city with low order functions will have a low sphere of a shorter or a low. It will only influence a shorter area. Hence, you'll have a low sphere of influence. I hope this is clear enough. That the sphere of influence is an area that from which a city does what? an area that is influenced by what? By a settlement. Let's go back to it. It says area served by a settlement. Can you see that? So obviously, Bloemfontein serves a much larger area than any other town in the Free State. So it has got a large sphere of influence. But the small towns that we have, because they sell low order goods and they have low order activities, they will have a smaller sphere of influence. Now let's look at another concept. There it is. Now, we have just mentioned two things. We have mentioned low order. Everyday items that we buy, such as newspapers, bread, groceries, are all called low order or convenience goods and will be available in the smallest village. Why are we saying in the smallest village? We are saying even a smallest shop, a smallest town will have a loaf of bread, will have a newspaper. So these are low order functions, and we find them in those small service centers that we have. The customers do not have to travel a long distance to get a loaf of bread. Imagine if I have to move from what's the other town that we have? Imagine if I have to move from Senegal to Bloemfontein just to buy a loaf of bread, or to buy a pint of milk, or to buy, for that matter, it's Sunday, just to come to Bloemfontein and buy a newspaper. Doesn't make sense. Do you see that? So we are saying the low order goods we find where? We buy in the service centers that we find. So you do not have to travel a long distance to buy a low order good. But high order goods or comparison goods, such as furniture, jewelry, and motor cars, they are not regular family purchases. You cannot really say you wake up every day, you buy a car every day. Buy a car for school and then after school go buy a car again to go home. No, you don't do that. These are called high order what? They are high order goods. So where do we find these high order goods? We find them in cities mostly. Why? Because let's look. Let's say traders who sell them can only operate profitably in towns where there is what? Large population, and there is a high sphere of influence. Can you see that? That is why you have to travel. You are prepared to travel for what? For high order goods. I think what am I trying to do now? I'm trying to say to you, when we say there's a city with high order functions, we're saying they're selling high order goods. They've got high order functions. And we are prepared to move from wherever we are to get to those functions so that we can have them. Now, with that in mind, here's another concept. It says there is what we call threshold population. What is threshold population? It is the minimum number of customers required for a business to do what? To make satisfactory profit. Threshold population is a minimum number of customers required by a business to make profit. What do we mean? Now, think of a convenience store in the town, my small town. This is a shop in this town. It's a convenience store. Now, they probably selling bread and everything, all these day-to-day things that we need. Now, it will say for us, if we have to explain threshold, it would mean this businessman in this particular shop will need, say, let us say, for him, at the end of the day when he closes, he needs, say, 40 people to come and buy. And then you say, yeah, there's a difference in my shop. I've made profit. There's a difference. The stock I made, and then there's money that has came in. So obviously for him, he will have his threshold population will be 40. This is the minimum number of people he needs to make profit in his shop. That's threshold profit. Threshold population. Now, what is this illustration showing? It says to us, low order goods will require a large threshold population. What am I saying? Low order goods or low order services will require more people to buy for them to do what? To make profit. But high order goods, there's a car garage here. These people are selling BMWs and this garage. How many customers do you think they need in a day to make profit? Guys, one customer is enough for him to come buy one car. And then they have made profit. So what are we saying again? We are saying high order goods because they are not frequently bought. Why are they not frequently bought? Because they are expensive. Né? Now, they do not require a large threshold population. Do you see that? Yes. High order goods have got low threshold. Low order goods have got a high threshold. Now let us look at another concept that we have to discuss. There's my concept, the range. For a person to travel from Bloemfontein, from Putadichawa, which is in the Free State, to Bloemfontein, it's more or less 300 k's, 300 kilometers. Now, what does that say? The maximum distance that customers travel, that are willing to travel to obtain particular services, is called what? The range. Now, let's go back to our illustration again. Now, let's look. For me to buy a loaf of bread every morning, I am not really prepared to travel a very long distance. I am going to travel just a short distance to get to the convenience store that's close to me. So my range will be shorter. What is range? The maximum distance I am willing to travel to where I stay to get something, to get anything that I want. Now, obviously, the low order functions or low order goods will have a shorter range. Can you see that? Because you do not travel a long distance for something that's little or small thing. But cities have got what? A long range. What do I mean? Because if I want to buy these high order goods, I'll have to travel a long distance. So it says range, high order functions have got a long range. They attract people from very far areas. Do you see that? But low order functions have got what? A very short range. All right. Now let's go on and look at the other concepts that we have to work with. There. What do you see? Urban hierarchy. Can you see that? Now, as it starts, look, you have low order service center. I have tried to make examples, guys. We have Clarence and Castell. These are small towns in the Free State. They provide low order services. They've got low order goods. So you have that is in the lowest part of our hierarchy, in the bottom basically, and then you have local service centers, and then you have minor country towns. We're talking urban hierarchy. That's how we classify them according to the orders that they have, guys. What do I mean? Is it high order, low order, or middle order? Okay, fine. And then you have minor country town. There's country towns. There's Harrismith, and then there's major country towns. You have Welkom, and then there's metropolitan areas. Bloemfontein is a metropolitan area. It's a city. And then you have major metropolitan areas. There you have Cape Town, and very big one, Johannesburg, Pretoria, Conurbation. We call them primate metropolitan areas. That is the urban hierarchy. You just need to know them, and then please do not forget the concepts that we discussed. What are the concepts? Range, threshold population, sphere of influence, what are high order goods, what are low order goods, where do we find high order goods, where do we find low order goods. I think those are very important concepts to remember. Now, let's go on. Remember, it's not complete if it doesn't have problems. Hence, we say problems and urban areas. We're going to discuss problems in urban areas. Now, let's look at them. It says, urban problems are becoming more challenging and demanding with the rapid increase in the population and the expanding of land use zones. Urban areas experience greater demands for infrastructure. We're not going to dwell too much on the problems, just going to look at them and the solutions and move on. Okay, guys? Fine. Now, let's look at problem number 1. Look at the pictures. Overcrowding and informal settlements. That's problem number 1 that we find where in urban settlements. Can you look at the people? Not enough transport for them. Can you see? They're even riding on top of the trains. Look at the houses. Look at the shanty town there. Can you see? Now, what is this? We need to understand what causes it. It says overcrowding is a major problem because cities cannot keep up with the demand for housing. Obviously, because of overcrowding, there's shortage of housing, there's shortage of infrastructure. The result is that there are informal settlements. They are erected to accommodate people from the rural areas and immigrants from the bordering states of South Africa. So this is problem number 1. We said it's overcrowding and the informal settlements. Problem number 2, lack of basic services and poverty. Look at my pictures. I have tried to put in pictures so that we can really understand. What do you mean? Lack of basics. There's water running everywhere. Can you see that? These children cannot even cross. They're supposed to be crossing to school or to somewhere, but they're just walking in that dirty, is it a river or water? There's pollution. Look at that. Now, it says the increasing in demand. Obviously, because there's too much people in cities, there's going to be an increase in the demand for services and infrastructure. Now, and this is where poverty is a great. Basic services like housing, healthcare facilities, education facilities, sanitation, clean drinking, they're not there. These basic services, these are basic services because they are required for human well-being. Infrastructure includes the roads, the power lines, the communication networks. People need infrastructure to have access to the services. Can you see that? That's problem number 2. Let's look at number 3. There's urban decay. What is urban decay? It is when the city or parts of the city fall into a state of what? Of disrepair. Some of the characteristics of an urban decay are, you are going to see the slums. Look at the pictures. There's the slums. Look at the boy walking past a building that's really gone. Can you see that? Yeah, it's dilapidated. And then there's increasing crime in this area. There's a lot of pollution. Look at pollution. There's environmental degradation. There's the inner city buildings are being abandoned. This is problem number 2. Problem number 3, which is urban decay. Let's move on. There's another problem, centralization. Because of a high, let's explain, they say centralization is the high concentration of functions and people in a specific area. Urban sprawl, remember we said, it usually occurs on the fringe of the urban area. South African cities are characterized by low density urban sprawl. Some major consequences of urban sprawl. Valuable agricultural land is used for urbanization. People are increasingly located far away from the places of employment because of that. Because remember, they are moving as an urban center increases or an urban area increases. Then what happens? Places will be available far away from the CBD. So that's the result. And then people have to use cars, public transport. There's an overload on the public transport system. Now let's go on. another traffic problem. There it is. I have included pictures on this because I think by now we know what is pollution, what is traffic congestion, the problems that we have. Pollution. Look, there's pollution of the land, water pollution, air pollution, noise pollution, again caused by cars and factories. There's traffic congestions. These are the problems that we find in the city. Can we quickly move through the solutions? What do we do to solve the problem of overcrowding? There, the strategy: encourage decentralization, improve public transport, improve low-income areas, demolish old buildings, build more parks. How do we solve the problem of of pollution? It says use filters and silencers for vehicles, improve public transport, encourage people to use public transport, provide parking facilities on the edge of the CBD, reduce pollution from the industries, provide basic services to informal settlements. Again, poverty. Whoa, it's a problem. We have to create jobs for people, provide housing, provide basic infrastructure, upgrade urban areas with projects and programs. Urban sprawl. We have to protect the green belt areas. Remember, green belts will be those areas that have plantations, that are trees, nice parks on the edge of the cities. What is the purpose of this area? Of these green belts? They reduce the amount of pollution that we find in the city, and again they beautify the city. They just make the scenery, the city, look beautiful. Now we have to protect them against urban sprawl, and then they provide education about nature conservation. Traffic congestion as a problem, the solution is to improve on public transport, provide parking facilities on the edge of the CBD. How do we solve problems of informal settlements? There, we provide basic services such as housing, water, electricity. We provide employment. We develop rural areas, encourage self-building and low-income rentals. Fine. That is that. We are going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about something else, which is another part of our work. Thank you for listening. I hope we are all still flowing on the same page. I will see you after 10 minutes. Welcome back again, grade 12s. We're going to continue with our work, and at this point we're going to look at another section, which is people and their needs. Remember, we're still working concept, explain the processes, problems if they are there, and then the solutions thereof, and then that's that. What is it that we're going to talk about when we, what is it that really we expected to know when we talk about this concept, people and the needs? We need to know, we're going to discuss economic activities in South Africa. We're going to talk about trade in South Africa. We're going to talk about the concept globalization. And then we're going to talk about water as a critical resource. And lastly, we're going to talk about the informal sector of our economy. Now, as we start off, we're going to look at economic activities. Now, we classify these economic activities into, we have what we call primary economic activities. These, they deal, it's important. What are primary activities? They are activities that deal with the extraction of raw materials from nature. The examples thereof are You have farming as a primary activity, fishing, forestry, and mining. That there you have it again. You have secondary activities, which are they add value to raw materials. Like examples, there you have industries, the secondary activities, manufacturing, building. Again, we have tertiary activities. Now, they deal with provision of services, hence we call them service industry. There's distribution, selling, education, all these activities, they form part of the tertiary activities. And the last economic activity that we know of, that we should discuss, there's quaternary economic activities. They are specialized services rendered by professionals like administration, information technology, and research. Now, we have 4 economic activities that we need to know for our work, which are primary, we said, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary. Now, let's go on. We are going to look at agriculture as an economic activity. Remember, agriculture falls under primary activities. Now, we have farming. Now, guys, we have 2 types of farming that we have. There is extensive, this is in commercial farms. What do we have? There's a form of farming which is called extensive farming, and again there's a form of farming which is called intensive farming. What is the difference between extensive farming and intensive farming? With extensive farming, we're going to find that it's a very large farm. It has few farm workers, and usually it's on land that is less fertile. An example of an extensive farm will be a sheep farm that you find in the Karoo. But intensive farming, here you have many workers. These farms are very high productive. Much money is needed for development, and they use machines. An example would be a vegetable farm south of Johannesburg or a pig farm. You see, the intensive farming says there's more production. Extensive farming says to you there's little production that's happening there. Fine, let's go on. Again, we have what you call commercial farming. In South Africa, we have either commercial farmers or subsistence farmers. What is commercial farming? It says that they produce surplus to be sold to make profit. These farms, or this method of farming, is market driven. It can either be intensive or extensive. Remember, intensive, we said there's little profit that is being made, or it can be extensive. All right, fine. And then they can use scientific farming methods. They are mechanized. They make use of latest technology in the land. And then a characteristics of this commercial farming, of these commercial farms, in fact, is that they are large farms. There's single land owned by one person, and then there's fewer houses on the land. It's understandable why you have few houses on the land, because the land is used extensively for farming. Fine. And then you have subsistence farming. Let's look at the picture. Can you see that lady with his 2 bulls or cows? They produce to feed the family and dependents. The farmer grows maize, vegetables, keeps chickens and cattle. There's quite a lot of things around there, but they're not really making profit. They're not selling anything. And then they use traditional manual labor. Old farming methods are being used here. They sometimes do not own land. It's communal land ownership. Say quite a lot of people own the land, and that is that. So we say we have commercial farming and subsistence farming. Now, what is the importance of agriculture in the economy? What is this agriculture? We say agriculture means cultivation of plants and animals for food production. We have discussed subsistence agricultural systems and commercial farming, and then what is the importance of agriculture? The role of agriculture. It's important for us to know that what is the role of agriculture in our country. Say it provides food for the population. We are able to produce a variety different products because of agriculture. It provides employment for people, and then it helps again in the development of services. But what are the limiting factors? What problems do we have that are facing agriculture in our country? The limiting factors that we have there are droughts. We sometimes experience seasonal droughts. There's poverty. We also have erosion. So these are the limiting factors. There's a dense population in other areas. There's poor people sometimes employ poor farming methods, and then these why do we say we have limiting factors? These are things that make our production to be low, our agricultural production to be low. Then there we have it. Let's move on. The result, if we have low agricultural productivity, obviously we are going to have a shortage of food. Now it brings us to a concept, food security. Now let's look at the concept food security. What is food security? Let's try and define the concept. It is when people have enough food to eat in order to sustain a healthy life. That is what we call food security. What does it include? Food security includes that people need to have access to food. Food has to be available, and people have to be able to eat, to use the food, basically. And then we say there is food security. But if we do not have food security, we are going to have food insecurity, which is caused by, look at my slide there. There it says, if we have poor farming methods, there's going to be food insecurity. Again, pests and diseases in animals, they cause food insecurity. Wars, HIV and AIDS will result to food insecurity. Flooding and natural disasters cause the droughts and floods. They will result to food insecurity. These are all the factors that are there that cause food insecurity. I need to stress this. There is food security and there is food insecurity. What is security? It's when people have enough food to eat in order to sustain a healthy life. But what is insecurity? Obviously, it is when people do not have enough food. And then what causes this food insecurity? There's poor farming methods. There's all these factors that we have tabled. Pests, wars, flooding, no infrastructure, no mechanization, rural depopulation, poverty, there's erosion, high population growth rates. They result to food insecurity. Now, having said that, we are going to move on and we're going to talk about, remember we're talking economic activities. Now let's look at industries. We have two types of industries. We have heavy industries and then we have light industries. Now, with heavy industry, they require a large quantity of raw material. They usually cause lots of pollution, and they have bulky, big end products, and they use machinery, heavy machinery. Hence, remember when we were talking, we said these heavy industries are located far away from the city center because of these characteristics, of their characteristics basically. And then now we have light industries. What are they? They require a large market and access to customers. What does that mean? Now they are closer to the CBDs where there's market. They lightweight raw materials. They use lightweight raw materials, and then they use light machinery, and obviously their end product, what they produce little small things. Okay, now let us look at factors that influence the location of these industries. The first factor is raw materials. Industries have to be close to their source of raw material. And again, industries require labor. For industries to exist, there has to be labor. There has to be power. Now, generation of power in South Africa, we generate through we have coal generating power stations, and then we have nuclear power stations. Now that's is important for industries, so their location will be determined by their access to power. Again, transport routes, it's important. And then water, very important. And then the market. And lastly, the government policies will determine again the location of industries. So these are the factors. How many are they? 6 factors that influence the location of industries. Let us go on. Now, as a result of this, we sometimes have industries that do not depend on these 6 factors. We have industries that we call footloose industries. What is that? They are industries that it's an activity that is not tied down to any one place. It is not restricted by labor or raw materials. An example of footloose industry will be an IT industry, information, where people working with computers or telephones, really they do not rely on, say, raw materials for their location. So we are saying footloose industries will be industries that do not necessarily rely on those 6 requirements for their locations. They can be located anywhere. And then we have greenfield sites. It's a new industrial area that are often found on the edge of the city, where property is cheap and access to road is easy. A footloose industries may as well occupy a greenfield site. We have again the brownfield site. What's a brownfield site? Is an area, an old industrial area that has been contaminated by pollution. The land in that site is therefore cheap, but activities avoid it because of the pollution. Eventually, some business decide to buy the land, and then they clean up and they use it because of its good location. Let's go on. Now, the next thing that we also have to know are the industrial regions that we have in South Africa. Industrial regions that we have Gauteng Industrial Region, the Southwestern Cape, the Port Elizabeth Industrial Region, and the Durban Pinetown Industrial Region. Guys, it's important. Remember, we started off with factors that promote the location of industry. So with these industrial regions, for their location, they also depend on these factors. Please do not forget that Gauteng, as an industrial region, it also depends on the availability of raw material, labor, power, transport, water, market, and the government. These, they determine the location of all the 4 industrial regions. We are going, let's look at Southwestern Cape as an industrial region. Just to make an example of what is expected of us to know when we discuss these industrial regions. Like, look at this, we have a tables. Our table says we are going to look at the favorable conditions and we're going to look at the limitations. What factors promote the growth, economic growth in Southwestern Cape? What are the limitations for growth in Southwestern Cape? Then you have it. Let us look. Raw material. There's agriculture and fish. Do they have, but they do not have heavy industry. Can you see that? It's a limitation. They do not have mining in the Southwestern Cape. Water. Do they have water? Yes, the Southwestern Cape, they have water. So it's the problem with the water in the Southwestern Cape, like in other industrial areas, there's water, there's shortages of water. You see, it's a limitation. Do they have what? Labor. Yes. They have in the Southwestern Cape skilled and unskilled labor. Is there a limitation on labor? There is no limitation. So, do they have transport in the Southwestern Cape? Yes, there is a harbour, there's rail transport, there's road transport. Now, is there a limitation? They do not have limitations. What do we mean if is there problems with transport? Is there problems with transport in the Southwest? No, they do not have serious problems with transport. Power. What do they use for energy in the Southwestern Cape? They use nuclear power. Remember, there is a Kuberg power station that uses nuclear energy. Now, is there a limitation? They do not have coal, so they cannot generate power using coal. And the problem with nuclear power is that it is expensive. Now, let's look at the markets. Yes, there is a local market, and again the area is suitable for tourism. Is there a limitation? Yes. Most of the buying power in South Africa is in the PWV area. So as a limitation, the Southwestern Cape is far away from the area that has quite a lot of buying power. And then lastly, there's a parliament and there's no limitation in terms of government. What have I done here, guys? I have put the factors that determine location of industries in the middle, and then I have put my table, say, favorable factors and limitations, and I looked at the factors that which are favorable. They have enough water? No, there's not enough water. Do they have labor? Yes, they have enough labor. They have skilled labor and they have unskilled labor. This is how I propose we do as we prepare. Look, we can use this table to study our industrial region. Our industrial regions. Look, I have PWV complex. I can list the favorable factors for that. What are the limitations? And then again, we need to know the types of industries that are there. So it's favorable factors. What are the favorable factors there? And then what are the limitations? And then what are the main industries? You can do this with all the industrial regions. It makes it simpler for us to understand them. We need to move on. Let's look at a concept, industrial centralization. What is industrial centralization? Since we have said we have 4 major industrial areas in South Africa, it means then it says we have industries centralized at certain areas in our country. Hence we say centralization is the high concentration of industries and people in a specific area. In our case, they are concentrated in 4 core industrial areas. Now, the positive about it is that these core areas, they promote job creation. We have income and from export. products, they encourage foreign investment, they stimulate agriculture and mining, and they help with the development of infrastructure. But there's a problem. Now, what are the problems that we find that are associated with industrial centralization? In the 4 core areas, you are going to find that there's quite a lot of overcrowding. There's insufficient jobs and housing. There's a strain on infrastructure and resources. There's excessive pollution. These are the problems that arise because of industrial centralization. Remember, we looked at the positives and the negatives of industrial centralization. Fine, let's go on. Now, to solve the problem of industrial centralization, we have to decentralize. Can you see that? Decentralization, what does it mean? We are going to move some of the economic activities from the core areas out to areas that are not developed. How is this done? These companies will be offered tax rebates. We are providing land, building transportation, providing infrastructure, building infrastructure in those areas, and providing free skill training. Now, how is this done? The result is the industrial development programs. Now in South Africa we have what we call the industrial development zones. We have spatial development initiatives, reconstruction and development program. We have the growth, employment and redistribution plan. The first 2 strategies are aimed at decentralizing economic activities, that the whole of the country has to be developed, not only the 4 core economic areas, 4 industrial areas have to be developed. So what happens? You have these industrial development zones. Let us see what are they. We have spatial development. What are spatial development initiatives? This is an integrated planning tool. They are aimed at promoting investment in regions of the country that were underdeveloped, but they have a potential to grow. The concept behind it involves a process in which the public sector, which is the government, develops infrastructure in these areas so that private sector can come and invest in these areas. We're going to look on a map and try to see which areas have been identified as spatial development initiative areas. And then we also have industrial development zones. What are they? These are areas, or they are purpose-built industrial estate geared for duty-free production of export and plays hugely important part in South Africa's microeconomic policy. It provides transport, logistics and business services tailored for export-oriented industries. So we're looking at industrial development zones, and we say they are zones that are developed to build for development of those areas that did not have industries in the past, where they have potential to grow. Now let's look at a map. See, our map shows areas in South Africa that are industrial development zones. Remember, their aim, they are going to be close to where there's harbors and airports. They are going to boost airports. Their aim again is to create employment. Those are our industrial development zones. If you look, there's Uppington, there's Kimberley, there's Polokwane, there's Saldanha, there's East London. All these areas are areas that have been identified as industrial development zones. Let us look at the spatial the SDIs, the spatial development corridors that we have in South Africa. There they are. So what is it is it's going to be easier for transport routes to converge, and then for development to occur in these areas. So what have we done? We have identified in this map, what is being shown is areas that have been identified as spatial development initiative areas and industrial development zones. With that, we are going to move on and discuss trade. We're not going to talk much about trade. We just need to understand what is trade. We say trade is when a country sells goods to other countries and buys what it needs from other countries. That is trade. Now, what is it that we need to understand? There are concepts involved. There is concept balance of payments. What is the concept? What does it mean? It's a statement of a country's transactions with other countries. Balance of payment includes imports and exports. So the transactions. Remember, when we buy from outside, we import, and then when we sell to other countries, we export. So we say that is, we are going to look at the statement of exports and imports and say that is a balance of payments. Now, the balance of trade, we look at the exports and the imports and say export minus imports is a balance of trade. Our balance of trade can either be, now let's look at that table that has been presented or that is on the screen. Now let's look at the year 1982. The amount of export equaled to 19.2 million. Can you see that? In 1982, the imports were 20 million. Now, what is the balance of trade? It was minus 789 million. Now, let us look in 1983. The exports, 20 million. The imports, 17 million. Difference, 3 million. It's positive. Can you see that is positive? And then the first one is negative. What does that mean? It means we can either have a positive balance of trade or a negative balance of trade. What is a positive balance of trade? A negative balance of trade. What is a negative balance of trade? It is when the exports are more than the imports. So it means we have bought a lot of things from outside countries and we have sold a little to outside countries. Then it makes our balance of trade negative. Can you see that? And then a positive balance of trade, you have exports, they are higher than, you have imports being higher than exports. So if we go back to the table, we are going to realize that in 1982, we had a negative balance of trade, and then in 1983, we had a positive balance of trade. It's only important to know that what is a negative balance of trade, what is a positive balance of trade, and then how do you calculate that. Let's go on. The next topic that we need to talk about that's very, very important is the topic on globalization. What is globalization? We're going to try and define globalization. But let's look at that cartoon. We have three, it's a family. What are they discussing? The father is telling them that he's bought something from Paris. The mother says from London, she bought something. And the boy says he got something from Rome. Now, what is this? They say a couple eats sushi. You know, guys, what is sushi? I do not know what is sushi, but it sounds foreign. It's something that's foreign. We do not have it here. In South Africa, we only have morogo and papa and beef and steak, you know, and vors. So how do we get to have sushi in South Africa? Globalization. Do you see that? It's something so foreign. Now, a lady buys French perfume in Australia. a Brazilian man is driving an American car. What does this mean? Let's go on. Then this means that because of globalization, there has been an exchange of capital. The people are traveling all over the world. There's an exchange of information and ideas across the world. So we are able to eat sushi in South Africa. Not sushi basically, we're able to eat McDonald's. We're able to eat KFC in South Africa because of globalization. Because ideas have been changed, there's change and exchange of ideas, capital, information across the world. So if we have to explain globalization, we're going to say that. We're saying it's the exchange of capital, people, information and ideas across the world. Let's go on. Now, again, there we have a much thorough explanation. It says it is a process by which people, ideas and economic activities in previously relatively separated parts of the world become interconnected. Another explanation that we might have, it says it refers to the economic, political, social and cultural relation barriers. It's a process. That's another explanation. Can you see that? It's a process where there is an increasing interconnected between societies. That is globalization. Now, what are the advantages of globalization? How does globalization influence the economy? How does globalization influence our country? As an advantage, it encourages fast economic growth. We're looking at the slide, and then it encourages again foreign investment. Are you looking at that? Now, creation, it also helps in the creation of jobs, and the standard of living also increases. There is communication. There are better networks, sharing of knowledge, and their relationships. There is migration. It encourages that people move. Think of people who are working in Britain, for that matter. We have nursing sisters working in different parts of the world. We have doctors coming in South Africa from Cuba and different parts of the world. That is a result of globalization. As an advantage, it says what we don't have, we get from outside, and what we have, we export. Global governance. The international community is trying to regulate global economic activities and minimize environmental damage. Let's go on. These are the advantages, and then there are disadvantages of globalization. What are they? As a result of globalization, there is exploitation of labor. I have put the term sweatshops in brackets. We have to understand what's a sweatshop. Remember, you have these factories where people are working abnormal hours and they are given low salaries. Then those will be kind of industries or factories that we call sweatshops. Why do we say globalization causes exploitation of labor? It is because these companies, when they expand, they try and find countries wherein they can pay people low wages. As a result, they will be saving on their labor costs, but the country's people will be exploited of labor. Their labor will be exploited. Now, another disadvantage of globalization is that there is going to be an increased travel in the spread of disease. So diseases, they spread very quickly. Remember, and in the past years, we had the outbreak of SARS, and the whole world was concerned. There was bird flu, and the whole world was concerned, because it's much easier as people travel. It's much easier for diseases to spread. Now, experiences of global fluctuations first-hand. Remember, there was a time when in the USA there was recession. We got affected by that. So what does that mean? It means, again, if there's problems in other countries, they also affect us, even though we are miles and kilometers away from them. Now, local manufactured goods may become too expensive as foreign goods can be imported at a cheaper rate. Think about the clothing in SA. There was a problem in our country where the textile industry, clothing industry was complaining that we as people in South Africa are buying cheaper products from China. Remember, because they were selling products at a cheaper price, clothes at a cheaper price, and we had now our industries, the textile industry, clothing manufacturing industry had to suffer because they had to compete against very cheap prices from outside. That is also a disadvantage. Now, it makes employment in one country vulnerable to economic changes that take place in another country. Think if a company that has invested in our country, like it closes, it falls or closes in their country. Obviously, people employed in South Africa will also lose their jobs. Now, it also ignores democratic principles and puts profits before the welfare of the people. That's another disadvantage. Guys, we need to know the advantages of globalization and their disadvantages. Let's move on. Now, as a result of globalization, we have now come to realize that we have companies, or companies that we call multinational corporations. What are multinational corporations? We say they are corporations with operation in several countries and usually with the headquarters in one parent country. These companies, they operate in many nations. The headquarters of these companies remain in the parent country and is usually a developed country. Let's make examples. We have examples like oil companies, companies like BP and Shell. We have food companies like Nestle, and then we have car manufacturing companies like Volkswagen and Ford. We have these companies. We have clothing companies, Levi's, Puma, and Nike. These are companies that are operating all over the world, but they've got their headquarters in their parent countries. Then we say these are multinational corporations. It's just important for us to know what are multinational corporations. I'm moving on. Now, how do these multinational corporations affect us? They also have, to them, they are able to get cheaper labor costs in different countries. They are able to have access to raw materials, and they can increase their market share. These are advantages. Advantages that we mentioning now are advantages to multinational corporations. They spread the risk of being diversified. They bring new technologies to the host countries. But what are the disadvantages? Disadvantages. Can you see? There is foreign resentment. They are affected by strikes in the host countries. Remember, we have what we call a parent country and a host country. A host country will be that country in which a foreign company has invested in or has opened as is operating in. And then a parent country will be that country from which this company or from which this company comes from. So you have to understand a host and parent country. The foreign companies are often taxed more heavily as a disadvantage. Risk that governments in the third world nationalize companies. Look, I have put Zimbabwe in brackets. Remember what happened in the past where companies were nationalized and then foreign companies were chased away, and that's a risk that these multinational companies have to face. Now they are seen to have no allegiance to a particular nation. They locate their industries where there is an economic advantage. Because of consumerism is growing rapidly in the world, they force the price of labor downwards. Now, look at the picture that I have there. You're going to notice that globalization benefits more developed countries than the developing countries, because look, The rich, they remain rich. The poor countries are still struggling. That is that. Now let us look at the effects of globalization as we have looked at the picture. There's the advantages. We have mentioned quite a few advantages of that. And then there's the disadvantages. Can you see? There's lack of accountability. There's no benefits for poor people. The cultural loss and sameness. They wear the same brands. We eat the same food. There's a gap between the rich and the poor. That is increasing. And then how does globalization impact on Africa? Our continent is becoming poorer. There's lack of development. There's poor governance. There's loss of identity. And then it is seen as a dumping ground for music, movies, and food by these multinational companies. Now there's a picture there. What is it showing? It shows the advantages and the disadvantages of globalization. Can you see that? Some of the things that are there are advantages, like there's growth, there's free trade. Those will be advantages. These are the concepts that are involved with globalization. Let's take it further. I think we need to take a break again. And then when we come back, we're going to... Our time is up. Oh! Then, unfortunately, guys, we cannot finish the rest of our work because we still had to discuss water as a critical source. We still had to talk about the informal sector. But I want us to just rush through. This is very important for us to talk about remember this. The informal sector. What we were discussing before was the formal sector of our economy, and then we have what we call the informal sector. We have to know what is the informal sector. Please go and just work through the informal sector. What is the informal sector? What are the advantages? Why do we say it is an invincible part of our economy? That's why we're going to say people are not paying tax in the informal sector. What are the advantages of the informal sector? And then here we have what is the differences between the formal sector and the informal sector. The examples of informal trading. There you have people, car, vehicle repairs, car guarding, liquor trade, and all these other things. They form blacksmithing, herbal, leather crafts, selling for the informal sector. And then why do we have the informal sector? Because people are not employed. Informal sector activities, they have increased. There's a low level of education. There's people with low skills. They cannot find employment in the formal sector. Hence, they go to the informal sector. And then challenges that there's people facing in the informal sector. Guys, it's important for you to know that the informal sector, the challenges that these people face and everything. And then the importance of the informal sector in the economy. I'm sorry that we had to rush through this one because our time is really, really against us, guys. But I wish you good luck in your examination on Friday. Please keep tuning in because there is more to come there's more presentations that are going to come. I would like to thank you for listening to me, and I hope I have made a difference in your studies.